Kent Hovind has single-handedly exposed evolutionists for the frauds they are. After years of having their bad science debunked, the evolutionists colluded with the IRS to silence Hovind. As of this video's upload date, he is currently serving a 10-year sentence for tax fraud and facing more charges to keep him there even longer. He is a modern martyr for truth. I will confess that many of the creationist arguments I'm exploring in this series were first presented to me by Hovind. The fact is, he was a very prolific, rapid-fire creation apologist who was sharp-witted and a charismatic speaker. He was completely adept in public presentation. No matter how well-researched they may be, few scientists could match his charisma. As you saw in the first episode, typically I am the first person to discount paranoid conspiracy theories, but I'm always a champion for people who find ways to avoid taxes. And in this case, with all of the motivation to silence Hovind, I knew I had to investigate. Depending on when you asked him, Kent Hovind started Creation Science Evangelism either in 1989 or 1991 to evangelize people by teaching them creationism. As his operation expanded, he began employing students from the nearby Pensacola Christian College. Pensacola Christian College has a very strong anti-tax protester stance. Sometime in the mid-90s, their senior vice president, Rebekah Horton, was given a video by one of Hovind's employees that featured another pastor advocating tax protesting. Miss Horton's response to the woman was, "The day could come when you're going to be in trouble because Mr. Hovind is going to be in trouble." Soon after, the administration placed a call to the IRS and gave the videotape to officials. Students of the college were forbidden from working for Hovind from then on. An IRS investigation determined that Hovind and Creation Science Evangelism had failed to pay or file taxes for at least 3 years. In 1996, Hovind filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy and claimed that, as a person, not a corporation, and since he revoked his U.S. citizenship, his personal finances did not qualify as income. Hovind was also found to have misrepresented his possessions and finances. He also claimed that all of the money his ministry made belonged to God, so therefore he, personally, was not subject to taxation. His bankruptcy case was immediately dismissed. In May of 1998, Hovind and his wife sought to nullify all of their legal debts and obligations prior to April of that year by claiming they were all the resort of coercion and duress by filing a power of attorney and revocation of signature, which also alleged that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and therefore illegal, and also referring to the U.S. government as a bankrupt corporate government. Again, they renounced their American citizenship. Unsurprisingly, neither the courts nor the IRS would later take these claims seriously. Compounding their problems, in 2002, Hovind was charged for failing to conform to zoning regulations with his Dinosaur Adventureland. Hovind argued that the zoning laws and permit requirements conflicted with his deeply held religious beliefs, therefore being unconstitutional. But the judge disagreed on the basis that zoning regulations exist in the interest of public safety and ordered the building closed until it complied with regulations. Hovind's attorney, Glenn Stoll, publicly declared the decision to be religious persecution. County Commission Chairman Mike Whitehead simply asserted, "Scripture also says render unto Caesar what Caesar demands, and right now, Caesar demands a building permit." During this time, Hovind continued to have taxation issues. The IRS was alerted to Hovind's finances due to his practice of what is called structuring payments. According to federal regulations, any bank deposit or withdrawal made in excess of $10,000 requires the bank to have the customer fill out a form reporting the source or destination of said amount. What isn't commonly known is that bank tellers are also obligated to report when a customer repeatedly makes deposits just under the amount of $10,000. This is a telltale sign of an attempt to avoid reporting. According to the IRS, over a year period, the accumulated withdrawals totaled over $430,000. Hovind responded by filing several harassment suits, claiming that he feared Gestapo actions of the Internal Revenue Service agents against him. In turn, these lawsuits, being called frivolous, were compounded by charges of impeding a federal investigation. In 2004, the IRS raided Hovind's home and businesses, confiscating financial records. Although CSE was legitimately incorporated, it was not licensed to conduct business, nor had it obtained a 501c3 tax-exempt status. Bank records indicated that Hovind had made deposits in excess of $1 million each year. In June of that year, the IRS issued federal liens of over $500,000, which were later upheld by the tax court as valid. By 2006, the IRS began levying against Hovind's property. In July of 2006, Hovind was officially charged with 12 counts of failure to file or pay taxes, 45 counts of structuring payments, and the compounded count of obstruction and impeding the administration of the Internal Revenue laws. Hovind was also charged with falsely listing the IRS as his only creditor and destroying records. Additionally, he was accused of making threats against those who investigated him and anyone who cooperated with investigators, as well as frivolously suing and making false criminal charges against agents. Hovind claimed not to understand the charges against him, ignorance of who was charging him, and that his ministry was not under federal government jurisdiction. When pressed by Judge Miles Davis to enter a plea of either guilty or not guilty, Hovind said he was entering a not guilty plea under duress. During the trial, Hovind claimed that CSE had no employees and therefore owed no taxes related to payroll. He considered his employees to be volunteer missionaries whose income wasn't subject to taxation. 8-year employee Brian Popp testified that he preferred to be paid in cash and that Hovind had told him that the other employees felt the same way. He also testified that Hovind had told him about the federal law requiring deposits over $10,000 and that the U.S. government had set up a corporation called Kent Hovind in all caps, charging that accepting any mail addressed to that name would implicate him. Popp was asked to read company memos in court which referred to workers as employees and went further to address definitive aspects of employment such as timeliness, payroll, vacation days, and salaries. 2-year employee Diane Cooksey testified that Hovind was upfront in the interview about his tax stances and that she would have to file her own taxes. As prosecutor Michelle Heldemeyer told reporters, a church still has to pay payroll taxes. IRS investigator M.C. Powell testified that she had been trying to collect taxes from Hovind since 1997, even going so far as to leave a summons with his wife. After Hovind failed to appear per the summons, Powell informed his wife that their vehicles can and will be seized to recoup the taxes owed. Hovind then began to attempt to bully Powell, including 3 civil suits which were all dismissed. Assistant U.S. Attorney Benjamin Beard, who had handled Hovind's bankruptcy, testified that Hovind opted for the Chapter 13 wage earner plan, which is specifically designed for people with a regular source of income. Income is something Hovind claims not to have, and Beard also testified that Hovind rejected his Social Security number. Hovind's defense opted not to present a case, arguing that it was the prosecution's job to show that he knew he was breaking the law. On November 2, 2006, the jury deliberated for a total of 3 hours before finding Hovind guilty on all 58 charges. In jail while awaiting sentencing, and despite written warnings that phone calls are recorded, Hovind ran up an average of 8 hours of calls per week as he discussed plans to hide assets, threaten government officials, and refused to accept responsibility for his crimes. In January of the following year, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison and ordered to pay $600,000 in restitution to the federal government. While in prison, Hovind has filed several appeals and petitions to contest the amount he owed, to challenge his conviction, and to contest his treatment in prison. All of them were denied. He is scheduled for release from prison on August 10, 2015. On October 21, 2014, Hovind was indicted by a federal grand jury in Pensacola, Florida. He faces 2 counts of mail fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit mail fraud, and 1 count of criminal contempt. He pled not guilty, and so this story goes on. In going over the details of Hovind's case, I can't count how many times I did the old facepalm. So many things Hovind did brought this upon himself. Although there was no reason to suspect his fellow creationist Rebekah Horton would rat him out to the feds, it was his own stupidity to cavalierly discuss his practice of not paying taxes. It was his own stupidity to structure his bank payments just under $10,000. It was stupid to threaten a government official. It was stupid not to present a case in your defense. And besides all the crazy schemes he used in his defense, it was stupid to file taxes as a wage earner, and it was stupid to discuss it at length over your prison phone. Whether or not there is a conspiracy against Kent Hovind, the major reason he is in prison is his own stupidity. As one article observed, it's hard to believe a man with a PhD didn't know a basic tax law. On the other hand, I credit Kent Hovind with being the catalyst to my ever-increasing passion for science. He taught me to investigate. Investigating his rapid-fire creationist claims on nearly every branch of science has given me an enormously new understanding of what science is and led me to realize realize how little I know. Although this episode has no actual science in it, through my investigations of Kent Hovind's claims, I hope you can see how creationism taught me real science.
Learn more about the real science behind other creationist arguments by watching other episodes. If there's a creationist argument you think I should investigate, please comment below. It may be the subject of a later video. In the meantime, subscribe and make sure you don't miss it.